Hello, hello. Good afternoon to all of you. Can you hear me well? Yes? Not well? If I do like this, is this better? Should I shout? Loud and proud, yes? Good afternoon to all of you.
Microphone is not working. Mic isn't working.
Let me check.
Your microphone isn't good.
Is not good?
This is a test. Can you hear me?
Okay, I will speak.
Yes, those of you who can, sorry, to enter like this, I'm sorry, I was not very polite. So those of you who have difficulties in listening, I mean, with in the room, you can put the headphones and you search the zero. Normally it's already in the zero, which is the floor. And then you listen better. And then you can control the volume. If you see there are some arrows, and you can control the volume, and it will be okay, I hope. And in that case, you don't need to speak so loud, because it will be...
Yeah, very sure. Good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to this session of what makes part of our 10th Freedom Drive. So welcome to all of you in the European Parliament. Welcome to the Freedom Drive and to stay with us despite the rain, the wind and cold. So now we are good inside. Welcome to this hearing with the title Independent Living in Europe. Are we going from bad to worse? So this event is hosted by our MEP, Marisa Matias. And we are very grateful for her and her other Portuguese colleagues. Those are the ones who offered us the lunch packages. So I think that we need to give them a big applause before we start. So let me introduce my colleague, a board member, Armin Alvedrian. He will present himself and he will welcome you.
Thank you, Nadia. I am Armen Alverjan from Armenia, and I'm also an annual board member. And now, honorable members of Parliament, dear Freedom Drivers, it is a pleasure and great honor to be here with you today. And first of all, I also would like to give a huge thanks to members of European Parliament, Marisa, Matias, and José Gusmão for being our allies, for being with us, and for hosting this event in the European Parliament. Today's Freedom Drive's protest has clearly demonstrated that disabled people not only want, but also are able to be proud, strong, and visible, no matter what the weather is like. I am from a country which is not a member of the European Union, from Armenia, a country heavily affected by the war and by the pandemic. And still the issues of disabled people are very similar or even the same everywhere in Europe. And it's my belief that independent living, the obstacles to independent living is not the most important obstacle, is not lack of funding. In my belief, it is lack of implementing the main slogan of disability movement, a global slogan, nothing about us without us. Of course, everybody knows this, and it looks like everybody accepts this. But in practice, many decision makers act differently. I can bring some examples. Institutions are no solutions. It's also well-known and widely accepted principle. However, we still get many reports from various European countries that huge funding goes to institutions, and even, moreover, large institutions are replaced by smaller ones. But for us in ENIL, institution is an institution. It's not a community life. So, I know that in some European countries recently, in last years, very nice houses were constructed specifically for disabled people. And now I have a question. Why should a disabled person live with other disabled people only? Just because of disability. So they should form a family, find their girlfriends, boyfriends, friends, only among the disabled. Isn't it strange? Isn't it odd now in 21st century? And another short example from my own country. Recently, after the decades of our struggle for independent living, of my organization, Unison, and other activists, the government adopted a decree on independent, on providing personal assistance. So it's a good step, it's great. However, the decree contains many, many strange provisions. For example, you cannot freely choose your personal assistant. The personal assistant should be trained by the government-funded Center of Independent Living. Why? The best trainer is disabled person, not a licensed someone. And there are also other gaps in this law. And one also very quick example about accessibility, and I will finish my small welcome word. Of course, in European countries, accessibility, physical accessibility, has dramatically improved during the last decades. However, even today, we can see facilities which are designed as disabled friendly, as accessible, but in fact they are not. For example, imagine a bathroom which has a lot of grab bars, and you see and say, oh wow, they did a great job. But when you try to use it, you cannot even approach the facility. So it's not, again, lack of funding. They spend a lot of money on the grab bars. It's lack of inclusiveness of decisions. And so I will just conclude to say that today's hearing in the European Parliament is a great opportunity for us to make our voices heard. And thank you very much for hosting this event, for being with us, and for your attention. And now I have an honor to give the floor to Member of European Parliament, Ms. Marisa Matias. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me say welcome to the European Parliament. For some of you is hello again, and hello Armen and all other friends who are here. For some of you is the first time, so I want you to feel welcome. This is your house, and as we are talking about independent living, we always should apply, as it was said, nothing about us without us, so this is the opportunity of hearing from you. I want you just to be a little patient. I will not speak much, but just to make an overview of what is at stake in this moment, and also what is the work that we have been trying to do over the last years. As you know, almost 12 years ago, more specifically in January 2011, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities entered into force in the European Union, and as a result, as you know, all 27 member states, at the time it was 28, now it's 27 member states were ratifying this convention. And I think we all share that this was a very historical moment and important for all of us. As you also know, the Article 19 on independent living and being included in the community gave all disabled people the right to live in the community with choices equal to the others. And this should have been the beginning of a path towards the end of the practice of obliging disabled people to live in settings such as nursing homes, psychiatric hospitals, group homes, social care facilities or children institutions. But unfortunately, that path is really still far away from being a reality, and it was started but not accomplished in a lot of the European member states. So we still have, and I imagine that you even more, the concern that the institutionalization and the inclusion of disabled people are not making the progress it should be done, and there's no full implementation of the UNHCR-PD recommendations in all the member states. In fact, in some of the member states, it doesn't exist at all. Some of them have not even started the process of this I never know how to say this word, and it's an important word for this meeting, but not even in Portuguese, so it's not because I'm speaking English, it's because I always have to stop, so I am going to say. So in some countries, the process of the institutionalization didn't start at all. So in other countries it has started, it's true, but not for real. I mean, there's this new trend of building smaller and smaller institutions, which then are called sheltered housing or homes. But as you know better than I, it doesn't mean being out of the institutions. It's not for being smaller or called homes that they represent a way of living in an independent way for disabled people. This situation was reinforced, the problems were reinforced during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you know, unfortunately, as we always have witnessed in different situations of crisis, when we had the pandemic crisis, a lot of institutions and authorities have decided that disabled people were not a priority. So it was a reinforcement of the problems that we already face. And because there were institutions which were completely shut off with no preparedness, with no measures in order to cope with this, a lot of families were incapable or powerless in protecting their own family, their loved ones, from extreme neglection and failure during these times. As a result of all this abuse and this situation, we know that people with disabilities were those who were more affected by the COVID pandemic. And in some countries, they accounted for 72% of the deaths. In Spain, for instance, disabled people accounted for 68% of the deaths, and in the Netherlands, 51%. We know that it is urgent that the European Union and its member states renew their commitment to deinstitutionalize. It was great now. And to implement the UNHCR-PD entirely in the countries. And we are working, we are trying to work for this. On 9 of September, the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities published new guidelines on deinstitutionalization, stating that these processes are either not compliant with the Convention or are still overdue. It was also pointed that institutionalization must never be considered as a form of protection of persons with disabilities or as a choice. With the adoption of this new document, we have a clear interpretation of the Article 19, and so misinterpretations of Article 19 should stop immediately. And as this is an additional fight for us here at the institutional level. So another key element of our work and our fight is to give proper conditions for independent life, and especially to have the capacity to implement the measures related to personal assistance and the availability of personal assistance. Today, in the 25 European Union member states have already personal assistance schemes. In any case, the majority of these schemes are poorly designed or not fully implemented. And we know that having schemes for personal assistance doesn't mean that then there are the funds or the investments or the necessary means to put it into practice. In some countries, there's a total incapacity to respond to the increasing demand of personal assistance. And in Belgium, for instance, the country that we are, there is a waiting list up to 23 years to receive the personal budget needed to hire personal assistance. So that's the situation we are living, and we are trying to fight for better and better solutions that can answer to the real interests of disabled people. We have been working on this in several domains. We have been working a lot with ENIL, and I want to use this opportunity to thank them for all the support. We, as a group in the European Parliament, the Left Group, we have asked for a study to determine the levels of institutionalization in the European Union and what should be done, and we got all the help for ENIL, and that should be recognized. So in sum, we are far away from independent living for disabled people, and we still have enormous problems that we need to address and to put into practice the measures which already exist but are not implemented, like, for instance, the personal assistance. From our side, you can count on us. We are still not the majority, but we are putting all our efforts in order to make this a reality sooner than later. Thank you again for being here. I have to apologize, but in a few minutes I have to leave for another meeting, and then I'll join you again. But the entire team is here, and we are more than looking forward to listen from you and to take note of your voices and recommendations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marisa, for your support, and we count on you to work together and to collaborate to make independent living and personal assistance a reality for all. So I just want to remind ourselves why are we here. So the hearing today is an opportunity for all political representatives to hear directly from us, people with disabilities, about our lives and the barriers that we continue to face to live independently in the community. And also this discussion takes place in the context of the combined second and third review of the European Union's performance as a party of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and at early stages of the implementation of the European Disability Strategy 2021-2030. And also it follows the COVID-19 pandemic and the devastating war in Ukraine. So we will use this opportunity today to draw attention to the most burning issues faced by our members of the European Network on Independent Living. So I will firstly start by giving the floor to our colleague Florian Sanders, who is the policy coordinator of ENIL, and he will present first of our demands. Florian, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor, Nadia. First of all, dear freedom drivers, I want to welcome you to the European Parliament, and dear MEP Marisa Matias, thank you for hosting us. Interacting with our members, collecting their concerns, and transporting it to policymakers is very much at the heart of our mission. And based on this, we have gathered our freedom drive demands. We present them in a setting at the Freedom Drive where we try to open the eyes of society and policymakers to the extent that disabled people are still excluded from equal participation in society. In particular, we protested today the countless lives that were lost during the COVID-19 pandemic, which makes us both sad and furious. Disabled people in institutions were often cut off from their families, isolated from the outside world. They were dependent on providers who often brought the virus into the facilities themselves, and public authorities who in many instances withheld emergency treatment. The results were terrible. In some countries, deaths in nursing homes accounted for up to 68% of all COVID-19 related fatalities. Even when there's no pandemic, living in an institution is a risky affair, something that many people often don't consider. There's plenty of evidence that living in an institution increases the risk to fall victim to fires, floodings, and all kinds of psychological and physical violence. The reports of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability have clear words on this and clear evidence. There are reports of illegal restraints, forced medication, and other forms of abuse. Even when such things don't happen, living in an institution segregates and excludes from enjoying the same rights non-disabled people take for granted, to choose where and with whom to live. Disabled people also face severe restrictions in access to employment, education, political participation, healthcare, recreational activities, and so many other areas of life. The problem has been known for a long time. In 2006, the UN General Assembly adopted the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, stating equal access for disabled people to all areas of life and freedom from confinement to institutions. Article 19 of the UNCRPD should have started the end of institutional settings like nursing homes and all forms of segregation. Roughly a decade after the EU and all member states became party to the UNCRPD, the number of disabled people living in institutions has not decreased, according to the evidence we have. It remains stable at 1.2 to 1.4 million people. Some countries have not even really started on deinstitutionalizations. Others are building smaller, on the outside, shinier institutions, which look better, but remain institutions on the inside. Instead of living in derelict castles in some cases, or huge buildings with even bars in front of the window, disabled people have to live in smaller houses called homes, or innovative shared housing. The newly published guidelines on deinstitutionalization, published by the CRPD, clarify that the sharing of services is an element of institutionalization. So-called homes still deprive disabled people of their freedom or impose routines and segregate. The new guidelines also clarify that when it comes to institutionalization, there can be no freedom of choice. As long as there are laws permitting the confinement based on disability, how can there? The argument that disabled people choose to live in institutions must never be used to justify maintaining this abusive system. The new DI guidelines name poverty as a main driver of institutionalization. The most important protection against poverty is income from work. an area where disabled people are heavily disadvantaged. In the EU, 74.8% of non-disabled people are in employment, compared to 50.6% of disabled people. Among the blind and partially sighted, even 75% are unemployed, and among autistic people, around 90%. Social protection schemes often exclude disabled people, and among the homeless, there are many disabled people. 29% of women and 27% of disabled men are at risk of poverty and social exclusion in the EU, compared to 22% of the entire population. Disabled people are also more likely to face in-work poverty compared to those without disabilities. The new guidelines on DI urge state parties to move ahead with the implementation of Article 19 of the UNCPD and guarantee independent living of disabled people. The new guidelines clearly state the support services needed to make independent living a reality. Personal assistance is named as the #1 community-based service required. This prioritization is also reflected in our Freedom Drive demands. We need access to UNCPD-aligned personal assistance for every disabled person who needs it in every country. At the moment, 25 EU countries have personal assistance schemes, but according to surveys we conducted among our members, none of them are really fit for purpose. In Belgium, disabled people who pass the eligibility assessment, then, according to which priority group they land in, still have to wait for up to 23 years to actually receive their PA. In many countries, such as Poland, Spain, or Cyprus, access to PA depends on the region. Many countries, for example, Denmark, discriminate against certain impairments, such as cognitive and psychosocial disabilities. In Finland, Slovakia, and also Germany, the funding is often not sufficient to cover all costs, or disabled people have to fight with authorities to get their costs covered. We need PA schemes who are open to every disabled person in need. PA schemes need to give users the power to freely choose their assistant, to be fully funded to cover all expenses and avoid out-of-pocket payment. We need PA that is fully controlled by the user, allowing to freely hire and train your PA, or delegate these tasks and providing peer support and supported decision making. We need good working conditions for PAs, for personal assistants, to make the job attractive and attract competent people. Personal assistance needs to be a portable service in order not to impede the freedom of movement inside the European Union. All countries need to allow disabled people living in institutions to apply for personal assistance. If you live in an institution and need the support, how can you choose to move out if you cannot even apply for PA? We need the European Union and its member states to stop spending millions of euros on institutions and instead invest into PA and other community-based services. Other community-based services, and also here the new DI guidelines provide a list, involve peer support, supportive caregivers for children in family settings, crisis support, support for communication, mobility, the provision of assistive technologies, and support in securing housing. The EU should finally start applying the ban on spending on institutions as codified by the UNCPD, Journal Comment number 5, and the new guidelines on DI. The European Commission has the competence and the responsibility to stop member states from spending EU funds on institutional settings. We need reforms of all EU funds to make the current legal interpretation that this is allowed impossible. We need deinstitutionalization strategies in all of Europe, in which countries codify clear commitments on DI, including short time frames, the allocation of funding, and coordination across departments. Currently, only 13 EU countries have DI strategies. According to our surveys, disabled people rate all of them as ineffective. It is never clear how and when DI is supposed to happen. Often, these strategies stretch over periods of 30 years or more. We need all laws permitting confinement due to disability to be retrieved. A complicating factor in drafting such strategies is that we don't even know for sure how many disabled people are confined to institutions in Europe. The figures I provided earlier are coming from studies which are using estimates. Closing the disability employment gap by placing more and more responsibility on the shoulders of disabled people won't work. All disabled people who could not obtain a qualifying degree from school because they were sent to segregated education should receive the opportunity to do so. The most important step, though, is to finally start reforming labour markets in earnest. We need a revision of the EU-level Employment Equality Directive, bringing it in line with the UN CPD and strengthening the concepts of direct, indirect and indirect discrimination and reasonable accommodation. We need a stricter enforcement of this directive, which is often disregarded because employers rather pay fines than hire a disabled person. The European Commission should start using its competence to launch infringement procedures against member states who do not enforce the directive. We need proactive inspection activities by the European Labour Authority and national labour inspectorates. Many countries don't allow you to take your PA to support you at work. Allowing PA at work in all countries would be a huge step forward. Both member states and the EU have to do significantly more to implement the UN CPD. Withholding such a service as personal assistance to a disabled person who needs it, in my opinion, constitutes a form of indirect discrimination, because without it, accessing all other areas of life on a basis equal to others can become difficult or impossible. Article 19 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union gives the Union the competence to adopt legislation to combat discrimination against disabled people. The EU should make use of this option, and I'm sure the EU could do more if the political will were to be found. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Florian, very much to share with us the outcomes of the survey that Enil has realized, and also to giving us clear facts about it's really about time to change, and also to give possible solutions. And we only just need some good political will to realize it with us, together with all the alliance. So the next part of this hearing will be, we will hear from different countries, the perspective from member states in Europe and around Europe. So the first speaker that I give the floor will be Diego Martins. He's from the Center for Independent Living of Portugal. Please, Diego, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I hope you are enjoying the Freedom Drive, and right now I want to start with some updates from Portugal. I will call it how to not follow the rules for dummies. Basically it's the title of the book, and the idea is to express about how Portugal is currently trying to trick the current and existing rules. So in one side we have personal assistance as a pilot project. It is a national pilot project, and it has over 1,000 people on this project, but the average number of hours for each person is around 3 hours per day. So this is, we estimate this is not enough for people to live independently. And this is mostly caused because the institutions that are managing the project, they are the very same institutions that put us inside the institutions. So they are not actually very interested on moving on from the current setup of having closed institutions far away from everyone. They are actually interested just to explore how to financially get benefit from this project. So basically is what they are doing. Some of these are actually trying to change something. They are actually trying to work and to manage how to actually change their own internal process to shift from the institutional mindset to personal assistance mindset. But they are so few that we are afraid that this will become a law that perpetuates the idea of institution leading these projects and leading personal assistance. So this is one of the wrong things with the system. There are many more fails in the system. We don't have direct payments, for example, so we are not allowed to actually freely choose our personal assistants as we want, because in some cases, since the employer is the institution, they have some rights to choose who they want to actually employ. So we don't have this free rights to choose however we want. And there are many more problems with the current pilot project. We hope some of these will not be in the law, but they are currently in the pilot projects. The other thing which may appear to not be linked to European rules or European directives, but they are. In fact, some of the problems in Portugal are related to the change of the profile of what is an institution. And as we know from other countries, we are moving on from those big institution setups to a group homes or these sheltered homes or things like that. So in Portugal we are doing the very same thing, and there is a trick to manage to not follow the rules, and the trick is basically to not use EU funds to finance these setups. So we are doing that. We are not using EU funds to construct this kind of institutional setups, but instead we are using national money to do that. So meanwhile we are not actually following any rules, because we are not following the convention. We are not following what the European Union says, and we are not following the actual best practices across the world. So we are just tricking the system. We are just using another way to keep building these setups and keep pushing people from the society to outside and to a place where they don't actually want to be. So this is the current situation. We have many more situations as, for example, the only commission about disability policy in Portugal has only one meeting, and they just had the meeting because they actually had to have this only one meeting to rush some documentation. So they are not actually trying to keep track of all of these things. Finally, and I will conclude, now there is this information about COVID. Everyone gets numbers about how many disabled people died and how many people were actually affected in terms of services, in terms of how their lives were impacted. We have nothing. We have no data about any of these issues. We know only from the news that there were about 3 large institutions where there were COVID, and the institutions were completely isolated from the exterior, and we never got any more news from these institutions. We don't know today how many people died, how many of these people in these institutions died. We still have no idea about that. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diego, to share with us again lack of disaggregated data that really enable us to lobby correctly and is just hiding the facts by not giving concrete data so that they could continue to build institution and use a lot of excuses to keep on building smaller group homes with the same context and 3 hours of assistance. What the hell are we going to do with 3 hours of assistance? Are we supposed to rest, to sleep the rest of the day, or even to die the rest of the day? It's really hard to hear things like this from this area. Okay, thank you anyway. So our next speakers from the Independent Living Center of Austria are Petra Vlieger and Volker Schönweisse. The floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak here, and thanks for showing our slides. Volker Schönweisse and I are going to present a few current perspectives on issues regarding the independent living of persons with disabilities in Austria. And Independent Living Austria, the organization that we belong to, is the umbrella organization of the independent living movement in Austria. Volker is first going to give a brief overview on the most burning issues of disability policy in Austria right now, and I will then talk about the use, or rather misuse, of EU funds for institutions in Austria. The next slide, please. As I said, we brought a few slides and we also included a few pictures. And on the first picture, you can see Volker, who is standing in his electric wheelchair in front of a ramp that's leading to a shop. But to get on the ramp, he would have to climb or jump a step. So actually the ramp is inaccessible for him. And that's a nice picture for the situation in Austria, I think, Volker. Now the floor is yours.
Yes, this picture symbolizes the situation in Austria. I would like to report briefly on Austria, which is still far from truly implementing the CRPD. A few months ago, the Austrian federal government agreed a new disability action plan for implementation of CRPD in Austria. However, This national action plan neither fixes structural improvements, nor does it reverse the deteriorations for persons with disabilities that have been legally enshrined in recent years either. TPOs heavily criticized the new national action plan, but there were hardly any political or public reactions. The Austrian media have become accustomed to paying little attention to the topic of disability. Instead, they engage in intensive charity business. You know, charity business, especially at Christmas time, under the leadership of the Austrian Broadcasting Corporation. The recently deceased activist Theresa Heidelmeier was a member of National Council and a long-time spokesman on disability for the Greens in Austria. She named the real background for the lack of active disability policy in Austria already 20 years ago. Theresa said, "The economic interests were given in 100%. She was then referring to a new Federal Disability Equality Act, which was passed without an injunctive relief and without a title for removal of barriers. The new National Action Plan is conceived a similar way. The measures included are vaguely formulated. They are not politically secured and financial backed to effectively implementation the CRPD. The end to institutional and structural discrimination cannot be expected. Here are some few examples. Please, next slide. The nationwide development of community-based support services and personal assistance is not guaranteed in Austria. There are no clearly formulated programs for DI that is in line with the CRPD and the common European guidelines on the transition from institutional to community-based care. A transfer of resources from isolating institutions towards community-based or mobile services and personal assistance is not encouraged in this National Action Plan. Thus, DI fails due to political will and money. This applies to the area of support for disabled people as well as assistance and care for the elderly. Efforts to design personal assistance for people with disabilities nationwide, uniform, needs-based, income-independent, for children and adults without age limits with all forms of disabilities in all areas of life, these efforts are reduced in the National Action Plan to establishing at most a pilot project by 2030. Stagnation is pre-programmed. In addition, legal regulations for accessibility in the area of housing have deteriorated over the last 10 years. A reversal of these deteriorations is not addressed in the National Action Plan in any way. However, without barrier-free housing, the dismantling of large institutions does not work. Living in the community with personal assistance and support by mobile services does not work either. This applies not only to institutions for disabled people, but also to the elderly with the enormous degree of institutionalization in Austria. Interest groups of the construction industry demanded and the deterioration of accessibility standards in building laws as part of their deregulation demands. Austrian politics and the interest groups are of the social economy as well as service providers are against DI and the redistribution of resources. In 2011, the Protection Against Dismissal for People with Disabilities in the Disability Employment Act was worsened due to pressure from the interest groups of economy and inaction of trade unions. The consequence was increasing unemployment of people with disabilities. In the current National Action Plan, the reversal of this deterioration is also completely missing. Contrary to the CRPD Committee's recommendation to reduce the number of persons with disabilities in sheltered workshops, there has been a dramatic increase of 32% during the last 10 years. This was partially co-founded by the EU funds. Peter Flieger is going to present more on this issue later. Furthermore, the National Action Plan accepts stagnation and even regress in inclusive education. Vaguely, it only deals with the further development of concepts for the expansion of inclusive education, while new special schools continue to be built in Austria. Next slide, please. There is growing unease among DPOs. Policymakers underestimate the rising resentment of disabled people about what is called participation, but is in fact tokenism. The Austrian Federal Monitoring Committee has already announced that it will be sent a special report on the retrograde development in Austria to the CRPD Committee. And tomorrow, demonstrations and vigils are taking place across Austria, called for by the Austrian Disability Council. Many DPOs are participating, demonstrating for implementation of the human rights of people with disabilities under the slogan, "Our patience is over, finally do something." Thank you. Peter?
Thank you, Volker, and let's hope that disabled people and their allies will be as loud, proud, and visible as we have been today in Brussels. Now, may I ask for the next slide, please? So I'm talking about the misuse of EU funds for institutions in Austria now. Independent Living Austria found evidence that EU funds are used, or as I already mentioned, rather misused, for building new or renovating existing institutions for children as well as for adults with disabilities. As you all know, it's extremely difficult to get meaningful information on the use of EU funds for persons with disabilities or for projects that focus on persons with disabilities. So activists in Austria find such cases often just by chance, and we all know that these few cases that we can report about are definitely not all the projects. There would be many more. The evidence found refers to the building of new and the renovation or improvement of residential facilities for disabled children, residential facilities for adults, and sheltered workshops for adults with disabilities. They were all co-funded by the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development. And on the picture that's included on this slide, you can see an institution, a large building that includes 3 residential groups for a total of 21 persons with disabilities, and a sheltered workshop with 32 places for persons with physical and intellectual disabilities. It's a large building complex that to us looks much more like an industrial facility than a house someone would like to live in. It is located on the edge of a small village in rural Upper Austria. The building is surrounded by a fence. More than 3 million euro of EU funds were invested into this newly built segregating institutions. Now, Independent Living Austria and ENIL submitted 2 official complaints to the EU Commission about this use of EU funds. One in 2020 on Upper Austria, which is one region in Austria, and one complaint was submitted in 2021 on Tyrol. The next slide, please. Independent Living Austria and ENIL argued for the infringement of EU law, and their arguments were based on the following laws or legal documents. First, on Article 26 of the EU Charter on Fundamental Rights, which ensures the independence, social and occupational integration, and the participation in the life of the community for persons with disabilities. Secondly, the argumentation was based on the Council Directive on the protection from discrimination in the workplace from the year 2000. Thirdly, on Principle 17 of the European Pillar of Social Rights, which refers to services that enable persons with disabilities to participate in the labor market and in society. And finally, last but not least, on Article 19 of the UN CRPD, which you all know, on living independently and being included in the community. The next slide, please. So, what did the EU Commission say? How did it respond to those 2 complaints? Well, the Commission's replies to the complaints of ENIL and Independent Living Austria were, to put it mildly, quite disappointing. The Commission shifts the whole responsibility for the use of EU funds solely to the member state and denies any own responsibility. Further, the Commission, in its reply to ENIL and Independent Living Austria, relies solely on information provided by state authorities, and it did not consult any kind of independent monitoring committees or human rights bodies in Austria. The Commission completely ignored much factual information that was provided by Independent Living Austria and ENIL. For example, in its argumentation that it's a process to move from larger process of DI includes moving from larger to smaller institutions, and in fact one small institution which was run down and provided places for 8 persons with disabilities, was replaced by a larger institution, a newly built institution with places for 16 persons with disabilities. And the Commission completely ignored such factual information. Altogether, the Commission does not consider the use of EU funds for segregating institutions as an infringement of EU law. However, we can report that just recently the Commission seems to have developed some awareness on the issue of the institutionalization of persons with disabilities in Austria. In a recent country report from spring 2022 on Austria, It says, I'm quoting, "The many people with disabilities that are living in institutions remains a challenge, calling for an effective deinstitutionalization strategy. This deinstitutionalization strategy should include community-based services, fostering inclusive education, employment, and independent living facilities." End of quote. So there seems to be some awareness rising in the European Commission. Let's hope for the best. May I ask for the last slide, please? However, just a few weeks ago, Independent Living Austria found out that the new institution only for children with disabilities is currently being built in Carinthia, another region in Austria. It's a residential facility for 16 children between 5 and 16 years old who are supposed to live there year-round and to attend a special school run by the same service provider. On the slide, there's a picture of the groundbreaking ceremony. There are 13 persons wearing helmets, which are typically used on construction sites, and 12 persons hold shovels that they are happily digging into the earth. The EU share of the total costs for this institution is said to be €1 million. So instead of removing walls and barriers, they keep building new segregating institutions for children with disabilities in Austria. Consequently, Independent Living Austria and ENIL are just preparing a third complaint on this case to the European Commission. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Petra and Volker, to prove that we are going from bad to worse. I have no other words than this. Well, it's really a violation of our basic human rights. I will give the floor to the last speaker for these perspectives from different states, and it is José from MEPs from Belgium. Jos, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to give you a state of affairs of the personal budgets in support of people with disabilities in Flanders. Flanders, the northern Dutch-speaking region of Belgium, has a scheme of personal budgets for people with disabilities from 18 years old, which is called Person Following Financing. People who got disabled after the age of 65 are excluded. Needs assessment takes into account the whole life situation, and after a long assessment procedure, it is the Flemish Agency for People with Disabilities that finally attributes the yearly individual budget, the amount of which is ranging, according to the degree of support needs, between almost 7,000 and a maximum of 93,000 euro. This money is not paid at once. Individual budgets are earmarked for reimbursement of assistance costs made by the budget holder and proven by support documents on the basis of contracts with service providers such as residential institutions, daycare centers, housekeeping services, or personal assistance. The figures of the annual report of the Flemish, next slide, of this Flemish Agency for People with Disabilities show that the total number of budget holders has steadily increased over the past 5 years, surpassing in 21 the peak of 27,000 people receiving a yearly person following budget. Okay, next slide. Most of them give their budget to licensed care providers who are responsible for a yearly expenditure of €1.5 billion. The cash budgets represent only a yearly cost of about €137 million, or 6.5% of the yearly budget of the Flemish Agency for People with Disabilities. So the situation has not substantially changed since the CRPD committee in its concluding observations on the first report of Belgium in 2014 highlighted the lack of a real DI plan. More of the actual state of affairs. People on the waiting list have already been allocated a personal budget after a long assessment procedure, but they are waiting until the Flemish government makes additional budget resources available in order to effectively dispose of the budget allocated to them. Therefore, at the end of December 21, almost 16,000 individual budgets were still on the waiting list to be provided. All the people on the waiting list are divided into 3 priority groups. You can see on the slide that a major catch-up was made in 2021 for those waiting in priority group 1. These are the people with the most urgent support needs. However, the amount of the personal budget allocated to them was often substantially reduced. And recently, on 15 July 2022, the Flemish government confirmed its intention to also catch up with those waiting in priority group 2, but now with a halving of the personal-related budget allocated to them. The Belgian Constitution has instructed also the Flemish legislator to safeguard the inclusion of the disabled people and thus to progressively realize a right to support in this regard. Thousands are still left out in the cold, and when they finally gain access to the budget allocated to them, the amount is significantly reduced. We still have a lot of work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jos, for highlighting again that despite the fact that the legislation permits a person with a disability that has a personal following budget, they still prefer to stay in an institution. Why? Because there is still not a variety of options of services and personal assistance inside the community. So that paradigm shift is still not there. So legislation alone is not enough. We need the other pillars of independent living to be realized. And only then people would have then the courage to get out of those institutions. Besides the fact that there was the terrible fact that people are on waiting list for more than 20 years. So now that we hear the realities of different countries in Europe, we will give the floor to an MEP, but with what can we expect from our elected representative at national and at European level to help us, to support us, to hear us, and to make a change on local level. So I have the honor to present to you, instead of mispronouncing her family name, I will say just Madame Catherine. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Katrin Langsieben. Some of you, or one of two of you here in the room maybe know me. When I got elected, I was the only woman with disability in that whole parliament. Now we are 6, so political participation in higher parliaments, let's say, there's room of improvement, as we say in English. So the political participation, get elected or has a possibility to participate on elections, especially for persons with intellectual disabilities or living in institutions, is very, very difficult. So the boss of an institution told me, why should they know that? Why should they know about their rights? That's more work for us. So please don't inform them. Being not informed, no access to information in easy language, and the strong belief, especially in my country, Germany, the strong belief that the institution is the best place you can have, where you can be, is still there. And if you fight against it, you are the evil person in the room, as always. So I'm very, very happy here to show the good examples that there are voices from the movement who are against the institutions. And here I'm your partner on your side. When I was a child, they asked me what profession you would, or what you would do when you are older, and what kind of job would you like to do? And they offered me an institution and an office job. There I would be safe, and I didn't know what an institution was, because I grew up in a regular school. I had no contacts to disabled people. I was the only girl in my school with a disability. And then they sent me the contract of that institution where I could work. Where I could work. And the rules I read was today €50 per month would be my salary. Okay. One day. One time per month, I had the right to go home. The institution was in Berlin. And I hadn't the right to leave the institution after 10 o'clock p.m. I was almost 18 years old. So they cut my rights, and I read it, and I decided, okay, I'm not going to do that. I will stay at home. And my parents supported me. And then I got a call from that institution. They heard that I will join them. And I was young and naive, and they asked me what kind of help I need. And I said, I don't need help, I don't come. I don't want to work there. Silence. And he shouted at me. He shouted at me and told me, he didn't know me, I would never ever find a place like that. I'm not thankful. I have to be thankful for the great opportunity they offered me. And if I believe I'm that clever to find another job, I would never ever achieve that. After they proposed me an institution, I had the dream of being a reporter. That was my dream, working as a journalist. And at least, you see, I became a member of the European Parliament, the best job I could ever get, let's say. So maybe I have prepared a long, long speech, and regarding the time, I think it's better to tell you something from the real life and practice. And now, me as an example, as a role model, I'm not sure. You're the only one that has advantages and disadvantages. But we in the Parliament, we push the Commission, and it's very, very crystal clear to us when it comes to funding. And here I have Commissioner Helena Dalli on my side, but you see, Helena Dalli isn't the only one, and or is the only one on our side here when it comes to REGI funds, when it comes to EFRE funds, when it comes to, we need to talk to the finance guys. That is still something different. But here we need to be very loud and clear and say no misuse of, and if we blame Hungary and Poland for misusing our money, I will blame my country for misusing EU money for spending it or investing it into institution and supporting part of the churches. So I'm very, very open, very clear on that. I think we have a long, long way to fight, but there is a possibility to do something else. The institution isn't the golden goal you can achieve. And that must be loud and clear in the society, that must be loud and clear in the parliaments, that must be loud and clear in the media. So, and here we need allies, of course, allies from the political side. You have allies from the political side, from the other groups, from the NGOs, from you, and that is important that we are on a team and fight together online or offline as a team. And the other one who still believe that the institution is the best you can get, you say no, there is an alternative. And the UN Convention say it crystal clear. People must have a choice, and the choice between staying with mom and dad or going in an institution is no choice. I have no choice if I can choose between meat and fish. As a green, I say, where are the vegetables and where is the salad? So I want to have a real choice, and I will decide where I have to live and with who. And no one else can do it, and no one else can do it or can say or blame me what I do. No one can tell you what you're able to do. So I leave it here. Have a nice evening, and I have to run to another meeting, and see you maybe tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I would like to see in the room if there is any MEP or representative or advisor from an MEP present here. Just raise your hand and we can give you the floor.
Don't be shy.
Yeah. And don't be shy, it's an open dialogue. So not for the moment, but no harm. We will send all the members of the Disability Intergroup, who is an informal group inside the European Parliament, where a lot of MEPs work on disability issues. We will send all of them our demands, and even all the others, to be sure that we are heard and that they receive our message, with the hope that next time they will be present. But we will follow this up. It's not without any following up. We will do this before the next Freedom Drive, try to see how they work on the demands. And Florian will have a lot of job, a hell of a job, because there are many of them. So tease them, remind them that we were all here today and that you want really an implementation of it. And we see solutions. So without further more, I go then to our last speaker, who is Miroslava Mima Ivanovic. She has an initiative of the Youth with Disability of Boca out in Montenegro, and she will present ENU's petition to end institutions. Mima, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nadia. Good afternoon to everybody here. It's my pleasure to be on the Freedom Drive and in the European Parliament for the first time. Now, a lot of things have been already mentioned, so I just want shortly to present the online petition which was launched by ENIL in December 2021 on the website change.org. The petition was launched on the initiative of Padar Odi, who was the European Solidarity Corps volunteer in the ENIL here in Brussels in that time. It gathered more than 1,150 signatures so far, and the signatures are still counted. So please, citizens of the EU, sign the petition on the online petition on the website change.org. As we have already heard, the situation regarding the independent living of persons with disabilities in the EU is worse. And unfortunately, I can witness that not only that EU is funding the prisons for persons with disabilities in its member states, but it is funding those institutions and prisons for persons with disabilities in countries which are candidates for membership in the EU. So there are many small institutions where you don't have any possibility to have your freedom, your voice heard, and your wishes fulfilled in Montenegro, which are funded by the EU. And the problem for us in Montenegro is that we are lobbying guided by the EU standards and international standards, and when you see that EU is funding prisons for persons with disabilities, then our voice, the voice of persons with disabilities, is actually stopped. That's the reason that it is crucial to sign the petition and to see the demands in it, and they cover all aspects of independent living. So first of all, it begins with closing the institutions of any kind, small, big, and for 6, for 2 people or 200 people. But it's not, it is only the first step. The other steps are to provide funding and sustainable schemes of personal assistance, but personal assistance which is based on control and management of users of personal assistance, not by some professional staff. It is also important to provide accessible transportation, accessible environment, so we can move around, not only have personal assistance for our, let's say, home needs and to stay imprisoned in home. And also, it's not just about physical environment. It is also about services, about ATMs with sound instructions, with signs on Braille, with free spaces in the bars and other public spaces for persons who need to be in the quiet spaces. Also, it is necessary to provide sustainable social schemes, so all community-based services needed for persons with disabilities are available, including sign language interpreters. Those persons with hearing impairment are also among ones who are very much discriminated against and excluded. It is also important to have all EU political parties arguing and lobbying for independent living, because only 6 members of Parliament, of European Parliament with disabilities is not enough. We need much more support from a much bigger number of members of Parliament. And also it is crucial to end funding the institutions and to start to fund only community-based services which are based on the will, choices, and control of persons with disabilities. All that would lead to the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So please go to the change.org and sign the petition and also see the demands of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mima. Before I open the floor, I just wanted to know what's the number that you need to achieve to have impact with the petition? How many, how strong should we be? For a stand of 1,000, 200, doesn't need 50,000?
As much as possible. So for now we have 1,150, but that number is collected within 10 months. So it would be great if we could have much more in this. It's pretty long time of 10 months, and I think that that data also shows how much persons with disabilities are segregated and do not have enough access to information. So it is very important to spread the information and to sign the petition by everybody who wants to help us to achieve actually our liberty.
Okay. And one final thing, what can we achieve if we attend a big amount? Can we use it to have pressure? Can we use it to have a resolution? Can we use it for something bigger, something better?
If we succeed to have enough signatures of the petition, on the online petition, it's a strong advocacy tool, because if we would have several thousands of signatures, that means very big number of votees also, and of persons who are not satisfied with the current political situation towards persons with disabilities.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a call now, so that maybe if you really believe that we can use this petition, and if you want to support it, put under your signature and your email the link to this petition. This will be really helpful. If we are 50 here or 100 here, and we send it to the 100 other people so it can duplicate it. Put it on your Facebook page and try to promote it so that we achieve from now until the end of the year the highest number that we can. So we still have some time. So if there is anybody in the audience who wants to share something with us, or in good practice or bad practice, or something that we can do, or something that we can support each other in it, the floor is open. Just present yourself briefly and keep it a little bit short to give the opportunity to other ones also to speak here in the Parliament. So just raise your hand or make some noise or whatever is in your possibility to do, and you can have the floor then. Okay, just push on the red button.
Good afternoon to all of you, dear participants, freedom drivers. Let us shortly introduce ourselves. Please, we represent Arogi. Arogi is the association of the visually impaired person who lives in Kyklades in Greece. May I present the President, Mrs. Anna Maria Foskolou. She's sitting next to me. We are very happy for our participation to this unique event. It is the first time we participate to the Freedom Forum, and I have a little bit of anxious to tell you the truth, because I cannot believe that we are here. I cannot believe that we belong to this great family of all people who is impaired. So if I am allowed to present you the Arogi sticker with Braille, which is awarded with a gold award at the Packaging Awards 2022 in Athens by having as initiator of the idea and sponsor of the action the company Nicolaou Pre-Press Flexoplates. With joy and excitement, we present you for the first time the label in Europe in the framework of Freedom Drive 2022, which is taking place under the auspices of the European Network on Independent Living, ENIL, in Brussels. If you have no objection, I would like to share with you a very special moment. I would like to share a sticker with Braille so that you can close your eyes and feel the way that people who cannot see read and write. I hope that you will have no objection to do so. It is a great moment for us. We are very happy and very proud that we represent Greece and Arogyi and all people who support our effort. Thank you very, very much for your attention. Very kind of you.
Thank you. And congratulations with the prize. Hope that will help you to achieve more than that. Okay? Maybe just that lady behind. Push on the button, yes, please.
Hey, hi. My name is Tony Zilmiat. I am representing Eli from Stockholm. In these 3 days, which I was here in Brussels for the first time, maybe it could be Brussels, another name, another country, but not Brussels. For example, yesterday, me and my colleagues we go together to check a dinner, but unfortunately, the road was very, very patchy. Actually, it doesn't different too much with the picture from Australia. It was similar, very similar, in similar location. So my question is, if I were next year here also, I gonna see the same process or not? Thank you.
Thank you. We hope so. We hope that the next time we can see changes. That's the reason why we are here. That we say that's enough. After 50 years of independent living, it's about time to be on the agenda and treated correctly, and that our cause or claims need to be realized. So we keep that hope. There was somebody here in front. Yes, please.
Push the microphone down. The microphone, just push it down a bit. No, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. My name is David Lega. I'm an elected member of the European Parliament representing Sweden with, as you can see, a severe disability myself. So I'm really sorry that I couldn't join you the whole day. I serve in the Committee on Foreign Affairs, and we had a lot with Russia today again, unfortunately. But I just wanted to thank you for being here to show that people with disabilities can be everywhere. And I would like to urge you to take part in the regular political parties as well. I did that in Sweden 15 years ago. I served as deputy mayor in Gothenburg, vice party chairman for our party, and now here. I don't care what party you affiliate with, but I want more people to represent as regular members, not only in organizations for people with disabilities. That is important, but it's also important that we are everywhere. So thank you for all that you do, and sorry I couldn't be with you all day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for encouraging us to become politicians, to help to make the change by ourselves. So this is a big call. Don't hesitate. Okay, thank you, Lard. Yeah, there in the middle.
Hello, everyone. It doesn't matter who I am. I have contributed, as many of us, in issuing guidelines on regional level, national level, EU level, UN level, and I believe that there is already so much guidelines, but there are billions of ways to be misinterpreted by the politicians. And since there are no many politicians in the room, if any, I believe it is only one at this moment, I believe that we should find a way to make independent living more attractive for the politicians, maybe attractive in a bad way, make it attractive for those who want to be benefited economically by it, because it is the only way to change things. I see that the same thing happens in every country, and I don't see an end to this. We must find more clever ways to change things towards what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, just beside me.
I'm from Greece too, and I'm 15 years old. It is my first time attending this event, and I would like to say that during these 2 days...
Can you please come closer to the mic? We don't hear you well. Okay. Well, that's also something that we need to reclaim, more accessibility and reasonable accommodation.
Okay, so what I understood is that we have much power if all disabled people from the whole Europe connect together. The only way to make changes is to have the people who have the last say talk with disabled people, communicate with us, and listen to what we have to say. And I personally, by coming with contact with many people who live probably more independently than I do, I understood better what I want and we all need to fight for.
Okay. Thank you very much. Definitely. I will take the man here and then the one behind. Yes, go ahead, please.
It's on. This is. Okay. My name is Ovidiu Platon. I'm from Romania. I represent the association Sunt Autist, which is a self-advocacy association for autistic, made by autistic people for autistic rights. And I'm going to put an aspect forth that I see here, as there are no decision makers here. Besides the people who are disabled, we were spoken to. From my perspective, we were spoken to, but there is not enough presence from my perspective that will create an impact, because just one person or two people or three people, okay, I don't want to mediate, but it's just what I see, that will go forth and say what we have said in this discussion, in this room. I don't think they can be heard generally. It's hearsay. You need, besides people who are members of the European Parliament and who are disabled themselves, who are we telling how hard it is to be disabled and not listened and without accommodations? They know. And the thing is, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit non-political in how I speak, and a little bit more blunt. But to me, and it may be an unpopular opinion, to me how it feels is like being given the big boy pants and being put in front of the mirror and feel important being here, in my perspective. And this is my perspective. I don't know who shares it. But if we want to make change, I think we have to be present here, maybe at the next Freedom Drive, be present here while the people that should be in these seats be present and be heard while they are here and not too busy for the next meeting. That's my perspective on this. Thank you.
You're completely right. You're completely right, and it's also a part of our responsibility. When we go and elect people, we need those who are going to represent us at the European Parliament. We should be sure that those people will listen to us, will be alliance. So we have a part of the responsibility, and indeed, we should try to have speaking time when there is a General Assembly, when they are all together, to mainstream disability and not only to preach in front of those who are already converted. That's for sure. Okay. I just have.
Can I just respond to this very briefly? This is Ines Bulic speaking from Enel. Well, we have just tweeted the same message on Enel Twitter, that basically we are here speaking to a room almost without any MEPs present, and thank you to those who are here, but it's not enough. There are 700 MEPs in this Parliament, and 1, 2, 3 MEPs is really not enough. So I would just encourage everyone to tweet their own MEP and to continue tweeting them and asking them why they're not here to listen to them talk about the issues they face in their country. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. So, sometimes we are always too nice. We may allow ourselves to be sometimes blame and shame publicly. There is no harm in it. Okay? The guy here in front, please. And then we're going to one on the back.
Hello. Is it working? Yes. Hello, my name is Łukasz Rylski. I'm an annual member from Poland. I have to say that I'm afraid that we are in the middle of a crisis, many crises, an economic one, a growing inflation, an ecological climate crisis, and as well the political one connected with the escalation of war in the Ukraine. So I'm afraid that as many other members of the society, we will be told that we have, as the community of disabled persons, that we have to resign from something. And that something will be independent living. So if the politicians and the mass media and the public opinion will be trying to convince us that if everyone has to resign from a comfortable life, we also have to resign from independent living priorities. We have to be strong enough to say no. We wouldn't resign from independent living, but we have to encourage mass public European opinion to be on our side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The man with his hand, and sorry that you waited so long. Yes, please. Floor is yours.
Hello. I'm the National Secretary and CEO, unpaid voluntary, of the National Council of People with Disabilities, charitable and member of CLG, and NCPD, Autistic Advocacy Council of Ireland, as National Coordinator and Advocate. I was brought up in Belgium, and I'm finding it very difficult to get around now. I'm in an electric wheelchair because I keep on sliding all over the place. It's very important that we make sure that the principles of nothing about us without us, as people with disabilities are listened to as service users and advocates, that we're not being told what to do by institutions of service providers, of parents, professionals and experts who tell us what we have to do. We have to encourage the system to have our voices heard and issues raised. So many are living in fear that won't come out because in Ireland, not signed the optional protocol, and it's all about service provision and funding through institutions and organisations. The shame of the fact that myself, as grandson of Belgian resistance leaders, who's brought up in Belgium, have to come here to raise issues of exclusion, of lack of services and diagnosis and support, and still having trouble getting around. We need to be listened to, our committees and representatives, and those of us that stood in elections and sit on community forum and platforms and stuff like this. We have to be listened to and to allow and enable people and their voices to be heard and not be told to shut up and do as we're told. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, here in front.
Hello, my name is Mariana Rosalind Macrel. I'm from Greece. I would just like to highlight the necessity for education at an early age concerning people with disabilities. And young children should be used to being close to the handicapped. Otherwise, there is intolerance and rejection leading to bullying, which I have personal experience of and many other people. That's all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we should start from young on to be within the regular sector, not in separated, segregating places. Last round, yes? Emil?
Can you hear me? Now? Any better? Okay. First of all, a question to the board. Why is there no accessibility for deaf and hard-hearing people in here? And second, an application, a proposal, a suggestion actually, to get best practice examples instead of only highlighting the problems, because a very important thing that we've faced in Greece, first of all, I'm from Greece. I'm representing I Living Perpato and a very big group of Greek people here for the first time actually. And what we faced when we discussed with Greek government officials and we tried to advocate was that they were asking for examples. They were asking for best practice, and when we looked for examples, we couldn't find so many. We had to have, let's say, a one-to-one relationship with somebody from another country. But I think that Anil should have something like best practice suggestions for any country, and actually networking countries that need some support on that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I will ask Ines may correct me, but about reasonable accommodation and facilities for the deaf and hard-hearing people. We ask people when they register to this event if they wanted, if they needed any kind of support. We had responses for the conference tomorrow. So for the conference tomorrow, as we are organizing by ourselves, we have We have a sign language interpretation and we have captioning, but this is inside the Parliament, so we couldn't decide. And did we have any requests, Ines? Did you have any requests for today? No, not as far as you want. But about the good practices, we are all here. We are all looking after good practices. Even if you find good ones, there is always a but after. So we are afraid to present them. Look, just even like Flanders was telling us, that you have the right, you have a person, we have direct payments. So you can go with your own money and you can go and buy and hire personal assistants. But people fail in it. Only 7% is using this opportunity while everything is there. Why? Lack of services, lack of knowledge of the job of personal assistant, lack of even the openness. And also we need money alone is not enough. It's not about we need staff, we need to educate people with disabilities themselves to employ personal assistants. But then we need also an accessible environment, access to education, access to work, access to leisure, access to a lot of things. So we always struggle, even within INEO, since years, to find a perfect, good example. We have good initiatives, we have good pilot projects, but after that, sadly, and it's an open call. Whoever has a good practice, whoever think that something may good practice, please share. Please share. We are all ear for that, and I hope that we'll get some. I'm looking at the time. We still have time for 2 or 3 last interventions, or maybe one of the speakers from the panel, if they want to say something to close the session. Okay. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Dirk Swakart from Belgium. I remember...
Push again on the button.
My name is Dirk Swakart, member from Independent Living Belgium. I feel frustrated because every year I do the protest here, but nothing's changed. We have to act now. I hear nothing that we will do today. If we come next year to here, it will be the same. But why do I have to come to here to hear the thing? What will this parliament do for independent living? That's my question. I didn't hear that today.
Well, sadly enough, they are not present, but we are here with demands and we want them to be realized. What if you don't come?
What?
What if you don't come? What if you don't protest? What if you don't make ourselves visible? What if you don't shout in the streets? What if you don't contact them and don't send them? Then we will regress even more. Then it's not nothing. It's not only nothing about us without us. Then it's they forgot about us. So we are obliged. We have not that lux. We have not that. We don't have that. Yeah, that chance to stay at home and to wait that somebody else will come to do it. If we don't do it by ourselves, if we don't repeat, and we need to repeat, and we need to repeat ourselves loudly, differently, many times. Maybe we should be more nasty. Maybe we should bind ourselves in front of the parliament. But if we don't do it, nothing will change. So we need to encourage each other. We need to find energy. We need to energize ourselves every time to repeat it until we are heard. Because we have no choice. If we don't do it by ourselves, it won't be done by others.
So for the last time, what do we want?
Excuse me?
Maybe for the last time, what do we want? What do we want it?
We want independent living for everybody, regardless of the support need. We won't break the walls. We want to bring people out in the society, having decent.
Maybe we have to do a sit-in and stay here until they listen to us. That's a question.
We should plan something like that, yes? I see a last hand over there in the middle. And then we really need to close before they kick us out. Yes, please.
Okay, some things changes. I must say it. When we were here for the first time, we got us empowered to struggle more and to struggle every year and to protest more and to achieve the personal assistance for the people in Slovenia. And we are coming here to achieve the personal assistance and the other rights for all the people, and especially for the people living in institutions who doesn't have any voices. They are not heard. They cannot be here. We are lucky. We have personal assistance and we come here and also tell the politicians in their name. Yes, maybe we are not heard. And of course, I'm sorry, I'm Claudia from Slovenia, from YHD. And I must say that I cried in Slovenian parliament. I cried also in this parliament years ago. And I'm just angry now. Angry because we still feel the same, that we are coming here and we are telling the stories to each other, like the day before and like we will tomorrow. But maybe this is also a way to empower ourselves to continue to strive, because we are all tired sometimes and we all have enough and we want to do other things maybe. But then again, we must remember that there are still people who does not have access to the services, who does have no right to choose where to live, and who still are not heard. And for them, we must tell our stories, our experiences, so that their voices one day will reach also out of these walls. So, thank you.
So thank you very much, Claudia. And indeed, but there's also one thing that we need to do ourselves anyway, is we should not stop and wait until the next Freedom Drive. That's too slow. We need to see changes and improvement and implementation as long as we are still alive. We buried already many of the activists the years ago. So take the demands, go to your national MEPs, try to bring it down on national and local level so that we can make some changes. And where there are struggles, report it back. When there's something that doesn't go away, report it back. Ian is there that we can, that we can support each other. I don't guarantee that we will achieve a lot in a slow time, but we are there to come and to continue and to repeat ourselves, because it's time to raise our voices and need to be heard. So we should avoid to have a kind of activism burnout. We should encourage each other, so don't hesitate. We have a party tonight, so we will forget all our problems. We just celebrate, just being between us, that we are there. We should part about ourselves, even if we don't achieve a lot. And if we do something, we do it slowly, but just to encourage each other. We just have a time off for ourselves. So we keep being motivated. We have a conference tomorrow morning where there will be a lot of different topics that we will discuss. There will be different politicians that will be present. So I will say for today, thank you very much for your courage to stay here until the end. Thank you very much for having protested in the rain and in the wind and in all those terrible conditions. But it's not for nothing. We have been proud and strong and visible. People saw us, people heard us. We have all the videos, we have our images that we can take with us to lobby for the next few months. And so, see you tonight to have a glass and to drink and to forget about this, and that we will continue all together. Thank you very much, and see you tonight at 7 o'clock.